I stood just outside the marble entrance of Athena on Fifth, the luxury hotel I built from the ground up. And yet, my sister Haley blocked the doorway with a smirk. "You can't afford to be here, Charlotte. Just go." Behind her, my mother approached and leaned in close. "Please don't make a scene tonight. It's your father's birthday. Don't embarrass him." The words hit harder than I expected. I wasn't on the guest list for the dinner, even though the venue belonged to me. So I smiled, not because it didn't hurt, but because I knew what was coming. Seconds later, the elevator chimed. The door opened. A tall man in a navy coat stepped into the lobby, my father's boss. He glanced around, then locked eyes with me. His expression changed instantly. "Good evening, ma'am," he said with deep respect. And just like that, the room fell silent. Growing up in the Morgan household meant living in a carefully curated hierarchy. My father, George, was the unchallenged head stoic, pragmatic, the kind of man who scheduled his own birthday 6 weeks in advance and expected everyone to attend in formal attire. My mother, Linda, played her role just as dutifully, organizing everything from floral centerpieces to what jokes were acceptable at the dinner table. And then there was Haley, younger sister by 4 years, the star of the family. Haley was everything I wasn't: sparkling, social, magnetic. She danced through school with top grades and never once doubted her spotlight. She became a corporate attorney in New York before turning 30 and was the kind of daughter my parents liked to mention at church, in newsletters, even in Christmas cards. Me? I was the footnote. "Charlotte's doing something with hotels now, I think," my mom would say when asked. That was the extent of it. To them, I was the eccentric one, the quiet one who didn't follow secure paths. I didn't go to grad school. I didn't work for a big firm. I didn't marry young. I moved cities, took risks, and disappeared into the service industry like it was some kind of rebellion. But it wasn't rebellion, it was survival. It was building something that no one in my family ever bothered to ask about. They thought I worked front desk shifts or coordinated weddings. Maybe managed a mid-tier hotel at best. In truth, I'd started as a night receptionist at 19. I learned every position from housekeeping to catering. By 27, I was a silent investor in a struggling boutique hotel. By 31, I owned 3 of them. Athena on Fifth was my crown jewel, a renovated 1,930s building in the heart of the city, turned into one of the most exclusive hospitality experiences in the state. But none of that mattered at home. At family events, I was still seated next to distant cousins or near the kids' table. I was never asked about my work, only about my love life, or when I planned to settle down. No one ever thought to ask me what I'd built. When I got the invitation to Dad's 65th birthday, I wasn't surprised that Haley had planned the whole thing. What did surprise me, though, was the location. Athena on Fifth. My hotel. My space. And yet no one consulted me. I wasn't even formally invited, just tagged in a group message Haley sent, assuming I'd sit somewhere in the back and keep quiet. They chose my hotel, and still thought I didn't belong. I left home at 22 with 2 duffel bags, a second-hand laptop, and no fanfare, no tearful goodbyes, no, "We're proud of you," just a quiet breakfast and a distracted, "Drive safe," from my dad. I moved to Denver and took a job at a roadside inn. Not glamorous, not even safe at times, but it was mine. I cleaned rooms, served coffee, and taught myself the business side during late-night shifts when the front desk was dead quiet. I never expected recognition, but what I didn't expect was silence. No one ever asked how I was doing. Not during Thanksgiving calls, not in birthday texts. My parents sent money to Haley when she needed help with rent her first year in New York. When I skipped Christmas to cover a staffing shortage, my mother told relatives I was too busy with hotel laundry. That phrase stuck. But I wasn't folding towels anymore. I was studying profit margins, learning how to negotiate vendor contracts, and teaching myself digital marketing. Every success I had came quietly, gritty, uncelebrated, but mine. By 25, I'd saved enough to partner in a small historic inn slated for demolition. While my parents were posting Haley's LinkedIn promotions, I was securing zoning permits and negotiating financing with skeptical bankers who never imagined a 20-something woman in sneakers and a flannel shirt could manage real estate. Still, I didn't call home to brag, not when the inn turned its first profit, not when I bought out my partner, and definitely not when I signed the deed to Athena on Fifth, the crumbling 5-story building with cracked marble floors, a leaky roof, and a soul that whispered stories. I renovated every inch, hired a team of artisans and hospitality experts, and rebranded it with quiet elegance. The irony was brutal. The family who barely acknowledged my existence unknowingly idolized what I'd built. My mom once forwarded me an article raving about that charming Art Deco hotel downtown. Completely unaware it was mine, I never corrected her. When Haley chose Athena for Dad's party, I debated saying something, but a part of me, only hardened by years of being overlooked, decided to let the moment unfold. They didn't know the crystalware they'd toast from bore my initials etched in the stem. They didn't know the art on the lobby walls was handpicked by me, or that the wine pairings came from my private collection. They didn't even know the woman they treated, like a family afterthought, was the same woman who signed every paycheck in that building. It would have been funny if it hadn't hurt so deeply. No one asked where I'd gone for 10 years. No one knew where I'd ended up. But on that night they would. Athena on Fifth wasn't just a hotel. It was a restoration of something no one believed in just like me. The building had been abandoned for years when I first stepped through its broken glass doors. Ivy crept in through shattered windows, the chandeliers dangled like forgotten dreams, and the floors creaked with every step. But I saw it. The potential. The story it could tell, if only someone would listen. Everyone thought I was crazy for taking it on. No business background, no outside investors, just savings scraped together, and a reputation I'd built one guest at a time. But I didn't need approval, I needed grit. And I had that in spades. It took 18 months, sleepless nights, and a lot of quiet tears. But when Athena reopened, it didn't whisper anymore. It spoke. Marble polished to a mirror finish. Velvet drapes in deep navy. Brass details from a foundry in Chicago. A rooftop garden. A wine cellar stocked with selections that took me years to curate. Every inch of the place had my fingerprints, not just as owner, but as architect of its soul. By the time it launched, Athena was being called one of the top boutique hotels in the region. Celebrities had stayed there. Michelin consultants had dined in its kitchen. But my name? It stayed off the press releases. I preferred it that way. The work spoke louder than the ego. Still, the irony wasn't lost on me when I found out the Morgansme family chose it for Dad's 65th birthday. At first, I thought Haley must have known. But when I heard her on the phone with our mother complaining about how expensive the private dining room was, I knew she had no idea. "Who even owns this place?" she scoffed. "You'd think they could be more reasonable for a family event." I almost laughed. Almost. I considered telling them. Briefly. But then I remembered all the years I'd been the shadow. The backup plan. The one they didn't mention. This wasn't revenge. It was revelation. So I called Avery Ross, my assistant general manager, and gave her a very specific set of instructions. The Thompson room would be reserved. Top-tier service. Custom floral arrangements. My father's favorite bourbon, sourced from Kentucky, and set aside for the end of the meal. Everything flawless. And I would pay for it, anonymously. "When they arrive," I told Avery, "treat them like royalty, but if they ask about me, say I'm unavailable." "You sure you don't want to make an entrance?" she asked. "Oh, I will," I replied, "but only when the time is right." As I hung up, I stood in the grand lobby and looked around. The ceiling glittered with hand-restored Art Deco tiles. The scent of fresh lilacs lingered in the air. And I smiled. They were about to walk into my world. The official invitation never arrived. No card in the mail, no text, no call, just a forwarded email from Haley. "Dinner is at 7 p.m. sharp. Formal attire. Don't be late, please." Let's not make this about you. Not even a, "Hi, Charlotte." Not even a signature. I stared at the screen for a long time, wondering if I should reply. Maybe ask what time they planned to arrive, or if they needed help coordinating the wine service. But I didn't. Because I knew what that email really meant. I wasn't wanted, I was tolerated. Like always. Avery kept me updated on the reservation as it evolved. Haley added people last minute, changed the floral arrangement 3 times, and haggled over the per-head cost like she was shopping at a flea market. She's asked for a vegetarian amuse, bouche with wow factor that doesn't involve mushrooms. Avery told me, barely hiding a grin. My mother had also called to confirm someone from the staff would be available to take pictures of the family. Nothing too dramatic, just tasteful candids. Oh, and could they avoid photographing Charlotte if she shows up? It's complicated. When Avery repeated that back to me, I felt a familiar ache. Not rage, not even hurt. Just exhaustion. I had spent years fighting to build something beautiful and, somehow, I still made them uncomfortable. I chose not to tell my staff who the family was. Not yet. There was power in restraint, in allowing the assumptions to unfold naturally, in letting people reveal how little they really knew. The night before the dinner, I stood alone in the Athena's rooftop garden. The string lights swayed softly in the breeze, casting a golden glow over the tables below. From up here, the whole city felt quiet, manageable, mine. I poured a glass of wine from my private cellar and sat down with a blank notebook. On the first page, I wrote a single line. Being underestimated has a price. It wasn't a warning, it was a truth. A cost I had paid again and again until I learned to stop seeking permission to exist. I still wasn't sure what I'd do the following evening. Part of me wanted to show up, dressed to the nines, and make a scene Haley would never forget. Another part of me, the one that had grown stronger with time, didn't need theatrics. The moment would come on its own. I didn't need to force it. I closed the notebook and looked out over the city. Somewhere in a sleek downtown office, my father was probably wrapping up his last meeting of the week. He had no idea the dinner tomorrow would be hosted in the lobby of the empire his daughter had quietly built. No idea that everything from the hors d'oeuvres to the champagne to the artwork on the walls was curated by the daughter he rarely called by name. And still, I was not invited. The night of the dinner, I didn't arrive through the staff entrance. I took the front steps, just like every other guest. The lobby of Athena on 5th shimmered under soft gold lighting, candlelight flickered in glass wall sconces. A string quartet played gently in the background. Guests in gowns and tailored suits milled about, glasses of champagne in hand. I'd chosen a sleek, tailored black gown with a high neckline and low back, elegant, understated, commanding. My heels clicked sharply across the marble as I approached the check-in desk, where Avery stood waiting. She gave me a discreet nod. The Morgans arrived 15 minutes ago. Your sister has already made 2 complaints about the lighting and 1 about the temperature of the wine. I smirked. Of course she has. I have Michael on standby just in case. I won't need him, I said. Unless someone tries to block the owner from entering. Avery smiled but didn't reply. I turned toward the dining wing just as Haley stepped into view, perfectly timed, as if the universe wanted to test my patience. She wore a satin emerald dress, and the same smug smile I remembered from every school play, every graduation, every birthday I dared to celebrate in her shadow. When she saw me, her expression hardened. "You're really here," she said, arms crossing. "Why wouldn't I be?" I asked calmly. "It's Dad's night, Charlotte, not yours." She glanced around, scanning for staff. "You can't just stroll in uninvited." "I'm not crashing," I said. "I'm simply entering my hotel." That made her laugh too loud, too sharp. "Your hotel? You're delusional." Then came the line that stuck with me. "Honestly, Charlotte, you can't even afford to eat here." And that's when our mother appeared, clutching her beaded clutch like it held the last ounce of her patience. She didn't say hello, didn't ask how I was. She just leaned in and whispered with a cold smile. Don't embarrass your father tonight. Please. We've worked so hard on this. Worked so hard. As if I hadn't spent years rebuilding the very building they now dined in. I opened my mouth to respond, but then I saw movement behind them. My father's boss, Mr. Raymond Callahan, CEO of one of the largest real estate conglomerates in the Midwest, stepped through the revolving door. Haley, oblivious, kept talking. Look, if you want, maybe I can ask one of the waitstaff if there's an extra seat near the wall. Just don't make this a thing. But Callahan was already walking past her. Past my mother. His eyes landed on me. He stopped. Miss Morgan? He said with a slight bow. I didn't expect to see you here. Haley froze. Yes, I replied evenly. It's lovely to see you, Mr. Callahan. He smiled warmly. Likewise, thank you again for hosting us in such a remarkable venue. Then, loudly enough for everyone in the lobby to hear. Good evening, ma'am. The word echoed. Polished, respectful, definitive. And just like that, the room fell silent. The word ma'am didn't just echote, detonated. It hung in the marble air, cutting through the gentle music, slicing past the murmurs from nearby guests, and landing squarely between Haley's perfectly arched brows. My sister's mouth parted, but no sound came. Her brain was clearly scrambling, trying to reconcile two opposing truths, the woman she had just mocked and dismissed, and the one being greeted with reverence by her father's CEO. My mother, still clutching her clutch, blinked rapidly. Her smile vanished. She turned to Mr. Callahan, with a mixture of confusion and attempted poise. You know Charlotte? She asked, voice tight. Mr. Callahan smiled politely. Yes, of course. We've worked together on 2 luxury developments in Chicago and San Diego. Brilliant strategist. One of the sharpest minds in hospitality. He turned back to me. Is the rooftop garden still open? I've told half my board about it. And the penthouse your design team outdid themselves. Thank you, I said calmly. It's one of my favorite projects. My mother stared at me as though I'd begun speaking in another language. You work with him? She asked. Before I could answer, another voice joined us. Miss Morgan, said Avery gently, stepping forward. The Winston suite is ready whenever you are. The staff is in place. And your father's favorite bourbon has been decanted, as requested. I gave her a nod. Excellent. I'll join shortly. Haley looked pale now. Wait, she snapped. What is going on? Mr. Callahan turned to her with a slight edge in his voice. Are you family? I'm her sister, she said quickly. Then I suggest, he said pointedly, you show your sister the respect her position warrants, especially in her own establishment. Haley opened her mouth again, then closed it. This time, for good. From the corner of my eye, I saw my father approaching from the bar, chatting with 2 older gentlemen. He hadn't yet noticed the growing scene in the lobby. My mother leaned toward me again, this time with a different tone. Not dismissive, not controlling, but anxious. Why didn't you tell us, Charlotte? She whispered. All this time, this place is yours? I met her eyes really met them for the first time in years. Because no one ever asked. A beat of silence passed, then another. Behind her, Haley slowly turned toward the Winston suite, as if seeing it for the first time as a rented dining room, but as something curated, owned, and led by the sister she thought she left behind. I took a breath, then stepped forward. Let's not keep the guests waiting, I said. As we entered the private suite, the entire staff stood taller, nodding to me with familiarity. Good evening, Miss Morgan. Lovely to have you with us tonight, ma'am. The chef has everything prepared as you requested. My father turned just in time to see Mr. Callahan offer me his arm, guiding me toward the head of the table, the seat Haley had obviously chosen for herself. Charlotte? Dad said slowly, as recognition flickered in his eyes. You know Ray. I smiled. Dad, I said, calmly and clearly, Ray works for me. The room went still again, my father's brow furrowed. You what? I own Athena on 5th, I said. And 4 other properties. There was a beat of stunned silence before Mr. Callahan added, almost playfully, "She's my boss on 3 projects. One of our top partners. You should be very proud." My father sat down slowly, eyes wide. My mother remained standing, her face drained of color. Haley didn't sit at all. She just stared. And for once in my life at that table, in that room, I didn't feel small. The table had been meticulously set, gold-rimmed plates, hand-pressed linen napkins, a centerpiece of white orchids and eucalyptus that I'd personally approved 2 days ago. But none of that compared to the silence now spreading like spilled wine across the room. My father sat stiffly in the leather chair at the head of the Winston Suite's long dining table. The chair beside him, originally reserved for Haley, remained empty. His gaze flicked between me and Mr. Callahan as if trying to solve an impossible equation. "You own this place?" he asked again, his voice catching. "Yes," I said simply. "And the other properties?" he continued, slower this time. "5 boutique hotels total. I started consulting 7 years ago. I acquired Athena on 5th 3 years back." He blinked. "You never said anything. You never asked." My words weren't sharp, just steady, factual. But they landed like a gavel. Across the table, Haley lowered herself into a chair near the end, where I had once expected to sit. She hadn't said a word since the lobby. Her eyes followed the staff as they moved with practiced grace-observers she'd mistaken as strangers, greeting me with a warmth and reverence she'd never offered. My mother finally spoke as the first course was served. "Why keep it from us?" she asked quietly, her fingers nervously smoothing her napkin. "Why now?" I considered that for a moment. The truth wasn't simple, but it was honest. Because for years, being anything other than Haley meant being dismissed. I could have told you about the business, about the hotels, but I knew exactly how the conversation would go, at questions you'd ask, what assumptions you'd make. So I let you assume. Mr. Callahan chuckled gently. "Your daughter's humility is one of her greatest strengths, Linda. You'd be surprised how many executives try to take credit for far less." My mother flushed. I wasn't trying to diminish her. "You didn't need to try," I said softly. The server approached with the main course, grilled salmon with citrus beurre blanc, one of my favorites. My father looked at his plate, then up at me. "This is your recipe, isn't it?" he asked. "It is." He nodded slowly. "It's excellent." That was the closest he'd ever come to a compliment. The rest of the dinner unfolded like a performance where half the cast had just learned their lines were wrong. My staff continued flawlessly, bringing out the vintage bourbon I had flown in specifically for my father. He sipped it slowly, his expression unreadable. As dessert approached, a server handed out small envelopes, gift certificates for weekend stays at one of my other properties, a thank you gesture I'd planned long before the confrontation. At the far end of the table, Haley finally spoke. "So, you've been doing all this while we thought you were still working the front desk?" "Yes," I said. "And not that there's anything wrong with that." She looked away. "I didn't know." "I know." A pause. Then she muttered, "Guess I should have asked." Another pause. Then, "You still should." And with that, the table turned not just in placement, but in power. After the dinner, most of the guests trickled out with polite smiles and uncertain glances. Some congratulated me quietly, others avoided eye contact altogether. My father lingered the longest, swirling the last of his bourbon in the glass, as though trying to find something to say. "I always thought you'd find your way," he finally offered. "I didn't lose it," I replied gently. "You just refused to see where it led." He nodded. No excuses this time. Just quiet recognition. That was enough for now. When the suite emptied, I returned to the lobby. The quartet had packed up. The candles flickered lower. My heels echoed alone as I crossed the marble and stepped into the silence I had built. I sat on one of the velvet lobby benches, beneath a gold-framed photo of Athena on Fifth's grand opening. No one else was in the shot. Just me, arms crossed, standing in front of the doors Haley had tried to block earlier that evening. Funny how symbolism waits for the right moment to sharpen. Avery appeared beside me, handing me a folded linen napkin with a tiny smirk. Inside was a note from the head waiter. Your family dines well, but you command the room. With respect, Leo. I smiled, then exhaled deeply. That was the thing about being underestimated. It wasn't just the sting of exclusion or the silence at family dinners. It was the constant labor of proving your value in a room full of people who were already convinced you had none. But tonight, that work stopped. Tonight, I stopped shrinking to fit their narrative. Being underestimated had a price, and I'd paid it in patience, in time, in nights spent building instead of begging for recognition. But it also bought me something more permanent: clarity. From now on, I would no longer allow their version of me to overwrite the truth. I wasn't the disappointment. I wasn't the failure. I was the architect. Of this hotel. Of this legacy. Of my own damn story. And anyone who wanted a seat at my table, family or not, would have to come with respect. Behind me, the lobby doors opened one last time. Haley stepped in alone, her heels hesitant. I stayed behind, she said, voice softer than I'd ever heard. I guess I just wanted to understand how you did all this without us. I looked at her. Because I had to. She nodded. I underestimated you. I stood slowly, meeting her eyes. I know. She hesitated. Is it too late to start asking the right questions? I paused, then stepped aside. Let's walk.